Thank you for coming. This is a press conference for the IETA and Climate Connect Vote for Doha survey. My name is Jeff Swartz. I'm the Director for International Policy at IETA, the International Emissions Trading Association. And with me here today is Nitin Tanwar. I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Hi, good morning, thanks. This is Nitin Tanwar. I'm from Climate Connect Limited. We are a news data and research company based in London and Delhi. And we are very pleased to announce the results of the second survey jointly done with IETA again this year.
So just to tell you a little bit about IETA, if you're not familiar with us before, we are the International Emissions Trading Association. We're a non-for-profit organization made up of about 155 companies who are active in the industry of emissions trading worldwide, not only in the CDM and JI, but also in California, in Australia, in the EU ETS, in China, and in other emerging jurisdictions that are putting in place a carbon cap on their environments. We promote best practices, standards, and effectiveness for carbon markets worldwide. And we're very pleased to reveal to you the surveys we did for Doha with Climate Connect. And we're very thrilled to be working with Climate Connect on this product.
Thanks, Jeff. Climate Connect is, as I mentioned, a news data and research company based in London and Delhi. We are focusing exclusively on post-2012 emerging markets in the climate space, be that in China, India, Australia, new sectors like aviation or California. This survey is quite exciting for us because it gives us an idea on what is the private sector's expectation from the global climate policy negotiations and what are the concrete steps they want to see in order for this market to flourish once again as it has done in the past. So yeah, really looking forward to announcing the results here.
Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about this survey, it's the second version of it. We did a similar survey in Durban. We started the survey on November of this month, and we started to receive the first responses on November 10th. The last response we received was on Sunday, just this past Sunday. So more or less all of the responses were received in the past 2 weeks. We asked every single person we know in our database of people working on emissions trading, and it was pretty good results in terms of response rates. We had about 99 people respond. It's difficult to do surveys. You would be surprised if you've ever done one before. The carbon markets are a small group of people, in fact. So we're pleased that we got about 100 people to respond to this, especially during a very busy time of year. But of those results, I'll just highlight a few things for you. And then Nitin is going to highlight 3 of the questions out of the 12 questions in total that we asked. In general, the responses came from a variety of different company types. Nitin will go into that in more detail in a moment. But just to give you a brief idea, we asked not only companies that emit carbon or other greenhouse gases, we also asked companies that trade carbon units, companies that verify and validate those credits, law firms that ensure that these transactions are legally sound and robust, and a few financial firms and project developers. Just to give you a little bit of highlights, I would say we had mixed results in general on the different types of questions we asked. We asked respondents a variety of questions related not only to the future of CDM and JI, but also on new market mechanisms, on RED+, as well as on NAMA financing and the Green Climate Fund. An overwhelming 80% of respondents to this survey expect that the Kyoto Protocol will be extended here in Doha. So that tells you very clearly that the carbon markets believe the Kyoto Protocol will continue, and they expect that Doha will enable that continuation to happen. Responding to a question of whether or not an international carbon market that will be negotiated under the Durban platform could emerge by 2015 or not, we had a mixed response. About 55% of respondents answered positively that they do think an international carbon market under the Durban platform will emerge by 2015, and about 45% said that they do not consider that to be a likely possibility. That means, from our point of view, that there is a cautious optimism towards a global and comprehensive emissions trading mechanism in the next 3 to 5 years. So there's positivity on the future of the Kyoto Protocol from the carbon markets, but in general, towards a new agreement, the respondents of this survey are cautiously optimistic. Aside from those two questions, the majority of respondents were very clear on other issues. 77% of the respondents were of the view that countries not part of the Kyoto Protocol's second phase or second commitment period should be granted access to CERs. And what does that mean exactly? That means that most of the carbon markets truly consider that the markets are oversupplied, and that it is very important to widen access to the carbon markets and the mechanisms currently under existence in the UNFCCC. So markets believe that that's important, that the widening access to these mechanisms is one way to resolve the current dynamic of oversupply and weak demand. And I think I'll just end with one other question in the summary, and then I'll allow Nitin to go into a few other highlights. And that's something rather interesting in my view. In terms of the future market and whether or not people are interested in investing in certain regions, the most significant indicator towards future investments of carbon market players were the regions of India and China. Nitin will add to this. But most of the markets view these two jurisdictions as being the most promising in terms of a future investment strategy. But again, that was just of the 99 people who responded to this survey and not indicative of the entire carbon market. I'll just leave it at that for now, and I'll let Nitin take over.
Thanks, Jeff. I just want to pick on some of the questions which we thought were quite interesting when you see the responses and try to correlate with what's happening in the market. As Jeff has mentioned, we got 99 responses. If we see the kind of people who are very aggressively responding to our questionnaires, we find that carbon market consultants, around 20% of the responses were from carbon market consultants. And then the second group was the DOEs, the validators and verifiers, at 13%. This is quite significant because if we speak to many of the players, these are the two groups of people who are most heavily impacted due to the turbulent circumstances and the uncertainty in the climate policy at the moment. And I think these two groups, the consultants as well as the DOEs, they came out clearly with what their expectation is by responding to this survey. There were other respondents as well, like EU ETS compliance companies, but surprisingly, despite being major players in the market, the number of responses we could gather from them were much lesser as compared to the consultants and the verifiers/validators. The next question, which Jeff has also touched upon, is whether an international market can emerge under the Durban platform by 2015. Surprisingly, over half of the responses said yes. what really it means is that people are now looking at these fragmented markets which are developing globally. And what their best expectation is that these markets will somehow be integrated, synced or linked by 2015 under the overall Durban platform. And I think the optimism regarding these fragmented markets has only increased over the past 1 year. Last year in Durban, when we carried out the survey, the results were such that, everyone was expecting fragmentation of the markets. But now with this response, the response to this question, over 50% people think this fragmentation will be somehow, linked to each other by 2015, which is quite interesting. And coming to the last question in our survey, again, Jeff has touched upon this, where people are looking to invest. What was rather striking is that almost 40% of the respondents skipped this question. So while the rate at which people were skipping other questions were just like 4 or 5%, over 40% people skipped this particular the answer to this particular question, which indicates that probably they are still not quite sure, even though they have the people who have responded have clearly outlined China and India to be the major countries where they are looking to invest in. But several people are still just sitting tight, and they are not showing their cards, or maybe they just don't have a strategy, and that's why they are not very clear on their future investment strategy as well. These are really some of the key highlights which we thought were quite interesting. There were other questions related to EU ETS, Green Climate Fund, and the REDS, and if there are more questions, we can probably get into details about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. Again, I'm really thrilled to be working with Climate Connect on this. We hope to do similar surveys in the future if possible. I think we have about 10 minutes left of our allotted time in this meeting room, so we're happy to take any questions and answers. I have to make a plug. Sorry, and for the other side events that IETA is doing, we have a whole booklet here on some of the activities we're doing in Doha that relate to carbon markets and market mechanisms, as well as carbon finance. So please come up and ask me for one of these, and it'll tell you everything that we're doing here over the next 2 weeks. So with that, we'll take any questions, related to the survey or more broadly, if you'd like. And I guess the microphone, first I'll take this lady and then the gentleman.
My name is Jessica Dell. I'm a reporter at Argus Media in London. You mentioned the question about whether or what your respondents thought of an international carbon market being negotiated under the Durban platform by 2015. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on kind of how much progress you think they'll make over the next 2 weeks here in Doha on this, whether you think kind of how likely is this in your view from IETA?
Yeah, so I'll go to the gentleman. I think the executive secretary gave an interview to Elizabeth Colbert in the Yale Environment 360 series. I don't know if anyone reads that. And she basically was quoted in that article a few weeks ago saying that she expects to see slow but steady progress here in general. And I would say from our organization's point of view on a new agreement, whether that includes new market mechanisms, we expect to see slow but steady progress as well. So we share the same sentiment as the executive secretary. We're hopeful that the parties will adhere to the timelines that they agreed to, both in the last meeting in Bangkok and before that in Durban. But in general, we expect slow but steady progress. Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm Alex Morales from Bloomberg News. I think I got the first percentage. Was 80% think the Kyoto Protocol will have a second commitment period agreed here in
That's
Doha.
correct.
That means 20% don't. Isn't that surprisingly high, given the Durban platform last year?
Well, I think it depends who you ask. carbon market people in general are an interesting bunch. Some of them are extremely pessimistic, given all that the markets have been through and that they continue to face. Recent, policy changes, not just in the EU ETS, but in general under the UNFCCC, have led to that type of pessimistic response, I would suspect. Also, we've waited quite a long time to deal with the second commitment period, and most of the market thinks that there will be a gap, that even if the market is able to deliver a second commitment period coming into force on January 1st of next year, the market in general has moved on, and the investments and the time to make those investments was not now, it was several years ago. So I would say that leads to a 20% response rate, but still 80% do think that there will be a second commitment period. But again, the market can only go where ambition goes, and all of these things, as you well know, are interrelated.
Just on that question, while 80% people said yes, only 12% people said no, and 8% are still undecided.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Georg Ehring from German Radio Deutschlandfunk. The prices for carbon are generally much lower than anticipated. Does this threaten the markets, or do you think it's normal functioning of the markets?
Yeah. So I have to give you the official position of my organization, and that's that we don't necessarily comment on pricing. We don't have an official position on what a carbon price should be. But so if the best people to ask are some of the members of my organization. But I can say that we support intervention in the EU ETS as one way to resolve the current dynamic of oversupply, and that has led to low prices. Outside of that, we don't have any position on where carbon prices should be. Obviously, we recognize the fact that carbon prices have to be at a level high enough to lead towards investment in low carbon technologies and other activities so that we can meet the 2-degree target. But we don't have a position on where prices should be in general. But we do support intervention in the EU ETS as one way of resolving the issue of oversupply and the low prices.
Interestingly, on this question, we did have 3 indirect questions relating to this in the survey. And in all the 3 indirect questions, over 50% of the people wanted some kind of action which would, basically have an impact or possibly on the on the north side for the current price of carbon.
Are there any other questions or comments? Where can people access the full survey results?
The website on which people can access the full survey results is knowledge.climate-connect.com/Doha Live.
Maybe one more time.
Yeah, knowledge.climate-connect.com/Doha Live. I'm sorry, I'll repeat it again.
We should have put it up on the PowerPoint, our apology.
Yeah, it is knowledge.climate-connect.com/Doha Live. One word. Thank you.
So last call for any questions. If not, I really thank you for your time and attention, and I wish you all the best of luck over this interesting next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.